Hi everyone, thanks for joining our Video 1 Options for Initial and Retake Candidates. My name is Stacey Hicks. I'm a National Board Certified Teacher and I'm on staff at the National Board. And I'm here with my colleague, Lisa Clark. Hi, Lisa.
Hi everybody, my name is Lisa Clark. I'm a board certified teacher and I also work at the National Board. Stacey and I are going to talk through some of the options that you have available to you as an initial and retake candidate, especially during these difficult times. So the first thing that we want to make sure that you know is that everything that we're going to talk through is available on our website. We have a special COVID-19 page and you'll be able to see a guide to candidate options for certification on that site. And we encourage you to check that out because the guide has more details than we're going to talk through, but we wanted to lay out some of the options that you have available. So we're going to get started with option 1. So in this scenario, you are able to submit all of your selected components or any of your selected June 12th. You would choose this option if you have all of your materials for components 2, 3, and/or 4, and if you don't have them, that you intend to have them by June 12th. So what do you need to do? So the first thing is that the portfolio deadline was extended to June 12th, and you may submit materials for scoring if you're able to and choose to. How will this impact you? If you submit all of your components in June and/or test by July, and we'll talk about that scenario in a few moments, you will receive all of your scores by December 31st, 2020, as originally scheduled. If you submit all of your components by the October deadline, you will receive all of your scores after December 31st, but before the registration deadline opens for the 2021 cycle in early 2021. And if you submit one or more components in June or test by July and submit one or more components in October, you will receive all of your scores after December 31st, but before the registration deadline. So we wanted to share that in some detail because you might find yourself, if you are working on 2 components, for example, component 2 and component 3, and you have everything that you need to meet the June 12th deadline for component 3, but you don't have everything that you need for component 2, so you are going to work with the October deadline for component 2. If that is the situation that you find yourself in, where you're meeting one deadline, you're meeting the June 12th deadline, but extending either into October or until next spring, please know that all of your components will be scored at the same time, and you will not receive a score before December 31st. So the second scenario, now this one is going to take a little bit of time for us to talk through because there are a couple of layers to this. I'm going to get us started and then Stacey will share some additional information. So this one is really on the component 1, all of the details that we have at the moment about component 1. The first thing to acknowledge is that the deadline has been extended to October 17th, 2020. This is a new deadline that was announced the last week in April. So if you've been receiving some of our updates, please know that this deadline is new for all of us. So what are the latest updates as it relates to component 1? So most of you probably know, if you have registered for this component, that our team and candidates have had lots of questions about how site closures are impacting the assessment centers. The Pearson VUE sites are, in most places, are going to remain closed through May 31st. And this is due to continued health and safety requirements. To ensure that candidates are able to complete testing during this 2019-2020 assessment cycle will be offering increased flexibility by extending the deadline to October 17th. Pearson VUE will continue to monitor the COVID-19 situation and make decisions about testing center operations in accordance with local authorities. But please know that the National Board is committed to providing testing capacity for all candidates and will provide updates regard to changes in site availability as soon as we know them. So we're going to talk through at situation 2A, 2B, and 2C. So for 2A, you might be in this situation, and many of you are this last week in April, that your assessment has been canceled. You've received a notification that the date that you had registered for and were planning to take your assessment has been canceled. So if you were scheduled to test in May, it is very likely that your appointment has already been canceled. We are currently in the process of extending that testing window till October 17th. Starting on Wednesday, October 29th, that's when our systems will be ready. You will be able to schedule a new appointment for as late as October 17th. Please note that the date that you test will determine the timeline for when you receive scores. So if you test before July 15th, you will receive your scores on or before December 31st. If you test after July 15th, you will receive your scores after December 31st, but before the registration deadline for the 2021 candidate cycle. So pretty early in the 2021 year. And that is similar to what we just reviewed for components 2, 3, and 4 if you submit after the deadline. So I'll turn it over to you, Stacy.
Thanks, Lisa. So I'm going to talk through scenario 2B. So you may be sitting in the scenario where you haven't had your assessment center appointment canceled, but you would like to test after July 15th. So you can do that. You'll need to have your authorization extended before you're permitted to schedule for a later date. So what that means is you can't schedule a later date if you already have an existing date in queue or in lock. So if you want to test after July 15th, you'll just need to go in and I'll walk you through the steps of the authorization process. But as a reminder, if you test later than July 15th, you'll not receive your scores in December. So if you want a later test date, you'll need to complete these following steps. So step 1 is cancel your current appointment. And you do that by contacting our Pearson VUE online, or you can do it by phone. I will say that Pearson VUE is experiencing high call volume. So being able to do this online, you might be able to get faster service, but you can try both online and through the 188 number. So if you call and cancel your current appointment, step 2 is that after you've successfully canceled that initial scheduled appointment, then you can contact National Board customer support online or by phone, and then you can have your authorization extended to October 17th. That will take approximately 2 to 3 business days for that reauthorization to be processed. So step 1, go ahead, cancel that appointment through Pearson VUE. Step 2, reach out to National Board customer support online or by phone so you can get that authorization extended. One important thing to keep in mind is that site availability and capacity is based on our current social distancing guidelines in each area. So that means that some testing center capacity could be limited depending on the area that you're living in, that you're working in. So if you have an appointment that is scheduled, we do encourage you to keep it, but we want you to know that there is flexibility if you want to extend and move your test through the October 17th deadline. So for scenario 2C, you may be sitting in the space where you no longer need to defer or withdraw. So you may have decided a few weeks ago that given the uncertainty with component 1 availability for testing centers and various stay-at-home orders, that you just didn't feel comfortable moving forward within the extended deadline. And so you may have deferred or even withdrawn your component 1 option. So if you have done that, but now this October deadline is sounding that it's perhaps doable for you and for your schedule and potentially for the COVID-19 implications, it's no worries. You can go ahead and you can do, you can reverse if you want. So if you've already submitted that COVID-19 exception form to either defer or withdraw for component 1, but now you feel that you could move forward with this extended deadline, you can resubmit that form by May 7th. And you just select no change or component not purchased option, and submitting that new form will actually override your previous selection. So good news there if you thought that the window wasn't enough for you and you needed to defer or withdraw. If that October deadline sounds attractive to you or sounds manageable, you can change that, that deferral or withdrawal decision. So just go through, find that exception form. We'll give you the links to all of this, and you can resubmit that form. The third scenario that we're going to talk through is maybe you're sitting and you won't be able to complete your selected components by the extended deadline, but you could complete a different component within that extended deadline. So where you may have registered for one, but because of different restrictions that you may be working with, whether it's federal, whether it's your district, whether it's state restrictions, and you needed to switch, you can still switch your component selection. So what you'd need to do is go to that COVID-19 exception form. And again, that May 7th deadline is important. Just update your component selections. And if you're unable to reach a decision by May 7th, because we know that there's still a lot of variability with COVID-19 reality, just contact customer service. Again, you can do that through the 1-800-22-TEACH number or through the online platform. So if you switch to a portfolio component, you'd still need to submit your materials no later than June 12th. If you switch to component 1, content knowledge, you'd need to schedule an appointment and test by October 17th. So how would that impact you? If you want to complete all those selected components by the extended spring 2020 deadline, you will receive scores on or before December 31st. So later extended deadline, you wouldn't receive your scores before December 31st. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Lisa to talk us through some additional scenario 4 work.
Great, thanks so much, Stacy. So scenario 4, you might be in the situation if you are unable to complete your selected components by the extended June deadline, but you do think that you will be able to do that by October 16th, 2020. So I just want to call out something. There are lots of dates, and some of these dates have been moving, but just want to acknowledge that as Stacy and I were talking through component 1, the deadline for component 1 is October 17th, and that is because it allows so that is October 17th. And for components 2, 3, and 4, the fall extended deadline is October 16th. So there are differences in those dates. So if you're in the situation where you think you'll be able to gather the evidence you need, or the extended time will give you the headspace to do the writing that that you need to do, here's what you'll have to do to submit in the October 16th fall extended window. So again, complete the COVID-19 exception form. I imagine by this point you have received that numerous times in your email. One thing to acknowledge, if you've joined any of our webinars or been reading the materials, you've probably seen the April 30th deadline. That was the initial deadline for this exception form. Given the changing landscape for component 1, we wanted to give you a little bit more time to make some decisions about the best option for you. So for all of the options that Stacy and I are talking through with you, the May 7th deadline is the new deadline for the exception form. If you find that you're unable to make a decision by the May 7th deadline, please contact customer service before that date, and they will talk you through your options there. So if you choose this option, you'll need to submit your material no later than October 16th, 2020. So let's talk through about the implications if you choose this particular scenario. So scores for portfolios submitted in October will be delayed past the December 31st date. However, scores for portfolios submitted in October will be provided before the registration window opens for the 2020 assessment cycle. So you won't receive your scores before December 31st, but you will receive them before the registration for the next cycle opens, so that you can make your determination about what components you want to pursue and if you need to do a retake. So if you choose this fall submission window and later find that you're able to submit material for scoring by June 12th, we know that some of you have material that's locked in your school, and you're not sure when you're going to be able to have access to that. You might be in the situation where you find that you're able to submit before by June 12th after all. Then you'll need to contact customer service no later than June 19th to change your option so that your scores are released on or before December 31st. If you do not notify us, your scores will be released with all other October submissions. So that's just something to be mindful of. If somehow your schedule changes in the other direction and you think you might be able to submit, please let us know so that we can send your work to assessors to be scored, and then you will be in the group of candidates that receive scores before December 31st. So scenario 5. Able to complete your selected components by the October 16th, 2020 deadline, but you know that you can and you want to complete those components during the next school year and submit them in the spring 2020 window. So if that's the situation that you're in, then the option, what we're calling this option, is that you are deferring your components until 2021. So what you need to do is fill out the form. Again, the same situation. If you're unable to make a decision by May 7th, please call customer service. Once you select your components during registration for the 2021 cycle, a fee waiver to the cost of your deferred components plus the registration fee will be posted to your candidate account. So this might be a video that in the spring you're going to be registration for the candidate cycle in 2021. So we're still in the process of establishing when the new registration window will open. As you can imagine, there have been lots of moving parts and moving deadlines. So we want to make sure that we've got a solid deadline to share with you. And then what you'll need to do is complete your deferred components following the 2020 cycle dates and deadlines. So how will this impact you? We know that many of you are sitting with questions around how does this impact my certification years and the number of years that I have to pursue. This option will not impact that certification journey. Your 5-year certification window will be extended by 1 year. and the 3-year component completion requirement will be extended to the 4th year of candidacy. So if you are in your 3rd year of candidacy and you are working on submitting your components for the first time, and you decide to defer and defer your candidate journey until the next candidate year, you will be granted another year to complete your components for the first time. If you're in a situation where you're working through some retakes, you will also have an additional year to do that. One thing that is important to know here is that the component and registration payments made to date will not be refunded as a fee waiver for the 2021 cycle. So if you do not use these funds in the 2021 cycle for the components that you are deferring, no refund will be made. And then scenario 6. So you might find yourself in scenario 6 if for a number of different reasons. But for this particular situation, your components by the October deadlines or by the spring deadlines. So in this situation, you would withdraw your components from the current cycle. You would do that by using the same form. We'll withdraw your component purchase for a refund less any service fees, and those refunds will take about 4 to 6 weeks. If you have not completed your first attempt of one or more components, and 2019-2020 was your 3rd year of candidacy, or if 2019-2020 was your 5th and final year of candidacy, your candidacy will be expired. Future attempts at board certification will be as a first-time candidate. I'm going to just unpack that a little because that sentence was pretty lengthy and a mouthful. So if you are in your 5th year of pursuing board certification, and the 5th year is the final year, and you decide to withdraw your components from this cycle and you are not working on any components, your candidacy will be expired and you'll have to start over. The same is true if you are working on, working on your components for the first time. You're not necessarily doing your retakes in your 3rd year of candidacy, then the same situation applies. Your candidacy will be expired and you will start over. You'll receive a refund of the component payments you have made to date, and if you are working with a third-party payer, the payments will be returned to the source. Your registration fee will not be refunded, and you will not be given any additional time towards your candidacy. So we encourage you, if you're in this situation, especially if you're in year 3 or year 5, to think about this option if this is where you're leaning. And this may be one of the options where if you're just needing a little bit more time, we would encourage you to call customer service, especially if you're in year 3 and year 5, so that you don't have to start all over. So I'll turn it back to you, Stacy.
Sure, thanks, Lisa. So Lisa and I have talked you through the 6 different scenarios that you may find yourself in. I'm just going to cover some additional items for you to be mindful of. The first piece is the exception form. So Lisa and I talked through this exception form many times throughout the scenarios. It's something I think that you saw on pretty much every single slide. So if you've chosen to submit material in October of 2020, if you've decided to defer to 2021, if you've decided to switch a component or withdraw, then you must submit that COVID-19 exception form. And the deadline to do that is May 7th, 2020. And that is a way for you to notify us of your decision. It's a way for you to keep track of your decisions as well, because you'll get that exception form bounce back to your email, so you'll have a receipt of that decision. Should you need to change your selected option, you can do that until May 7th. But it's important to note that after May 7th, just submitted an exception form, and we just want you to know that we're working to process that request, and we'll reach out to you in the next week or two. If you're unable to make a decision by May, options that may be available to you. So again, that exception form is required for a number of scenarios that you may have found yourself in. Just make sure that you turn that in by May 7th, and if you're please call our customer service number to talk through it with a representative, because we want to make sure that you feel comfortable with the options that you have that are laid in front of you, and that you can move forward. Reach out to us. The next piece that I want to talk about is submitting early. So submitting early is a question that we've gotten quite a bit. Some folks have decided that they're going to move forward with the October submission window. So they're going to submit by October 16th, 2020. But then you may discover later that you're actually able to submit your materials. If you're able to do that and you want to submit by June 12th, which was the original extension of the window, you can still do that. Just make sure to contact customer support no later than June 19th, which is 7 days following that date, to make sure that we're aware of the option that you're choosing. And the reason that that's important, if you want to move forward with submitting early, is that we know of your choice to go ahead and pull all of your materials, that we can forward those to our assessors, that we make sure that we are understanding the option that you want to sit with. So if you want to submit early, you can do that. Just make sure that you let us know, so it starts the trigger effect of us pulling materials and scoring materials, and then being able to give you a decision about or when that decision would come through on your scoring. So the next piece is deferring, withdrawing, and then managing your uploaded portfolio files. So this is important to know. If you have elected portfolio components, materials available to you following the submission. So if you're deferring until next cycle, that materials sitting in the ePortfolio, kind of as a holding tank, you want to make sure that you pull those down and have those files, so you don't lose access to that and all of the hard work and evidence that you've managed to capture and upload thus far. And if you're deferring to cycle 2021, when that registration window opens, and default your account to that exact amount when you deferred. So Lisa mentioned this a little bit earlier in some of the options. If you decide to wait, that you want to complete a different component for 2021, you'll just need to contact our customer service for instructions. If your deferred component was funded by a third-party payer, you'll need to consult with your third-party payer making changes before making those changes. So we want to make sure that if you have a third-party payer who has paid or submitted funds on your behalf, that you may with. So all of your components by the October deadline, you'll receive all of your scores after December 31st, 2020, but before the registration deadline for the 2021 cycle in early 2021. So you submit all in June or July, you submit all in October. If you maybe have, if you've chosen to submit one or more components in June or by the test date in July, and then you decide to submit one or more components in October, you'll receive all of your scores after December 31st, 2020, before that registration deadline for the new cycle opens. So that's an important piece to recognize, that if you do some split submission windows, you'll receive your scores at that October 31st deadline, and you would only receive one adjusted score report. So that's why you're going to wait until the after December 31st deadline to get all of that information. So you can do that. You can choose your own adventure, if you will, on your submission deadlines, but that will affect score release dates. I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Lisa. She's going to talk a little bit about Atlas and Atlas for Candidates.
Great. Thanks so much, Stacy. So we thought we could end this recording with a couple of supports that you have available, regardless of where you are in your candidate journey. So the first one is Atlas for Candidates. You should have received an email a couple of months ago with this information. Atlas is a video case library of previous National Board submissions from teachers who are now board certified. It is their video, written commentary. One thing to note, however, is that the videos and written commentaries that you'll see in Atlas are from a previous assessment. So the video links are different, and the video prompts are also different. But we think it's a great example. Sometimes we hear teachers looking for examples of, what kinds of videos and what does the written commentary look like. And so what we wanted to do is to make this resource available to you. So how can you have access to this? Here is our Atlas page on our website, and what you'll do, the little arrow jumped right down to resources and materials, but it should be pointing right at candidates. If you click the 30-day free trial, you won't get the access to the candidate version, and you'll only get a 30-day trial. But if you click on the candidate button, you'll be asked to take a quick survey, and then within a couple of days, you'll have access to Atlas for Candidates, and you will have that for the life time of your candidacy. So encourage you to do that. And before I talk about this virtual course, one thing that I wanted to share and what they have found useful is that Atlas, the written commentary, really helps you see descriptive, analytical, and reflective writing. And encourage you to check that out. Also, Stacy and I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago on Atlas for Candidates, and had a really skilled candidate support provider talk through how he uses this to support candidates. And so before we sign off, I'll make sure that you know how to find that. And the other thing that we wanted to share with you is this a virtual course that is available for all candidates. It was not developed by the National Board, but something that we wanted to put on your radar. If you take this quick survey here, we will make sure that you're signed up again within a couple of days. And it talks through an overview of everything from understanding the components to submission, to then understanding your score when you get your score released. So that might be a course that you may want to check out. And then just to end, here is the National Board COVID page. This is where you'll see the guides that Stacy and I have referenced. a link to all of the webinars that we're hosting, including the webinars that we've hosted, and have the recordings for those there. And you'll also be able to see here the number for customer service that Stacy and I kept referring to, and as well as the web form if you want to reach out. As Stacy mentioned, they're receiving pretty high volume right now, so you may want to use the web form. So these are places where you can go for additional information. We hope about, you know, what years can I use my evidence from? Stacy and I have another video on guidance on portfolio submissions for certification. So I encourage you to check that out, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions there. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.